Hi, everyone, and welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Ultimate Men's Movement with our host, Dr. Jack Rocco. Hi, Dr. Jack.
How are you, Neil? Good morning.
Fantastic. Good morning.
Yeah, happy Men's Mental Health Awareness Month.
And I think it's important to discuss how what we should be thinking about this month.
Yeah. Let me pull this up. I had some statistics that came up. The word they use is deaths of despair. And deaths of despair are ranked as the number three cause of all death in America. And a death of despair is anything that's drug, alcohol, or suicide related. And of that category, there are 200,000 people each year who die from death of despair, and 75% of them are men. So that is the importance of Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And, I can go back over my years, physicians, friends, colleagues, partners who have killed themselves, or, they were that train wreck waiting to happen.
Yeah.
That guy that you saw that was, drinking, driving, out doing things, high risk behavior. And so that's a staggering statistic. 200,000 guys a year, or 200,000 people per year, 75% of which are men. So that's why I think the importance of men's mental health awareness. I always say, it's the big head, not the little head. I think we should have a t-shirt for that. Because I think, men's attitude, men's confidence, men's mojo is really something that we need to focus on, we need to be aware of, and we need to help each other through it. Because, there's more and more statistics, 83% suffer from some sort of depression. And, there's a lot of those issues. But once again, men don't like to show their vulnerability. They keep it inside. They put on a happy face, a go-getter attitude. And you never know, you would never suspect.
No, you never would suspect it, and because we don't show those emotions, but we don't know what's inside is really eating at us, and if we don't have other guys to talk to, we're not going to be able to share those things or share with somebody because it's ultimately we have to share it with somebody, or else at one point those lonely days can lead to something really serious.
Yeah. And then, the loved ones you leave behind, I don't think it doesn't solve the problems. And I don't know if you believe in any, karmic reincarnation or what have you, but I heard someone say, and I don't know if I do or not, but someone say that if you do that, you're going to get sent right back to try again. So a lot of these issues, or if you have kids, whatever issues you're dealing with, you don't want to leave those issues on the children. You want to deal with them in your life. That's, I think, your responsibility. Um, so I think that's the message with that, and I think it's important. Have you had any of those tragedies in your life, Neil?
I mean, I lost my father. I mean, if that, you call that a tragedy 5 or 6 years ago, and that was a big challenge in my life. But I think that was the biggest challenge is losing my father, and still, we never get over it. You know,
Yeah. I mean, I'm
especially
with
he's your best friend, and you're like, okay, I can't talk to him anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I said the same thing. My father passed just a couple months ago, and it's a weird thing because, a cousin asked me about it recently, and I'm like, it's just weird because he's there, he's still here, but he's not here. His influences, his voice, I think we talked about it before. The dreams that seem more like visitations in the night.
Right.
So, those voices, those messages from the ancestors, from the people down the line, they do stay with you. And it's important. So, but to transition a little bit, one of the things I want to talk about is, in that same vein, men's relationships and how, having good, strong male relationships, male mentors, male role models, male colleagues. It seems to me, I was thinking the other day, it's like most people I know, you always like to have that rugged, individualistic, lone wolf attitude, that's somehow that's an attractive male feature. But the guys who are really successful have large networks of people. You have an accountant, you have an attorney, you have a best friend, you have a group of golf buddies, a group of poker buddies, someone that a good group of friends that you're with. It seems to me that successful people always have those networks. And you build off each other, you gain strength from each other, both practically as well as spiritually or morale wise. And, we talked about this before, the male loneliness epidemic and some of those, the side effects of that. But um, even if that is your reason for getting together, former military colleagues who now are away from the herd, they're away from the team, the unit, and now they're alone. And I think it's important to reach out to those guys, but not just reach out to them, get together with them on occasion, collaborate with them, um, those kinds of things. What are your thoughts on that? You keep a lot
Yeah.
of old friends. You keep a
Yeah, I
lot of
mean,
old friends in
so
your life.
really, it's very interesting. I have a network of people that literally it's all through online, but it's conversations with people online, having conversations all the time,
Hmm.
brainstorming different ideas. I'm connected to so many people, but having those friends like close to me, no, that's not the case. But when you become you're on meetings constantly and you're friends with your clients, you are helping and you're able to share those certain things. I think also the big thing is when you're going through this, you have to have a good mindset and meditation, working out, eating right. Specifically, when you are upset, how do you release that anger? How do you, in a healthy way? And how do you have, and how, who do you talk to? And that's where you have clients to go to potentially, or friends, but you reach out to them, but you're constantly talking to people and having conversations. I think that if you're sharing, but one thing that is strong that men need to start to do is look at that ultimate spiritual realm as well. How can
Hmm.
it spiritually, it could be even law of attraction, whatever it is, having that hope each day to get up and go is the most important thing. And surrounding yourself with people around you that believe that same thing is important. When you're
Yeah.
not, when you're angry, when you're upset, when you just don't like life, those people will come around you all the time.
Yeah. And the caveat of that group of men that you have, it has to be a group of men that you believe in,
Right.
that are, whether that be a church organization, a nonprofit, a baseball team, something you have a common interest in that you can agree with. If you have to sacrifice your morals, sacrifice your belief system or your inner core, that becomes more of or if you're at a job that is, not productive, that doesn't value you, you need to get into an area where you agree with, you're motivated by, you're uplifted by this group of men. It can't just be, just the random group of guys down at the bar getting drunk every weekend. I mean, if you want a little release, that's okay, but that can't be your core, that you always go to. You got to have something that you believe in, something that's a higher cause, something that's bigger than yourself, that really moves you forward. But that comes from that group of men, that work with you. I think, the other, a lot of different nuances to this. I think a lot of guys lose it during marriage. They get married, and the idea that, they need to spend all their time with their wife and their kids. A lot of guys get drowned in that. They lose those male friendships. They lose those, hey, you used to go golfing with us. You used to take a trip with us once a year. Now you don't do it. Well, I'm busy, the wife, the kids. And I think it's just important for women who, we have women who listen to our show to realize that, those male friendships that your husband, your significant other brings with them, that's important for your relationship with him as well. He needs to have that release, and you need to not only, allow it, but encourage it. And, women get They'll do girls' weekends, girls' night, and no one seems to give a hard time. But if men want to go out to hang together, somehow it feels as though they're going out to get into trouble in some circles.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that you just don't know how important it is. And I agree with you. Your guy friends that you were friends with in high school, sometimes they disappear. Your friends when you are in college disappear in certain ways, or even when it's couple friends and you get divorced. That's the biggest issue. And I agree, and I think that Dr. Jack, that's the challenge. And if you have only a certain amount of time, men don't have those close friends. And how do you develop those close friends? By being involved in activities, but really having a conversation with your wife or significant other about how important it is to bond with other men.
Hmm. Yeah, when I was in Altoona, I was very active with the Shriners group there. And, the Shriners, they have, Shriners for me was something that was, my aunt had polio when she was, in the 40s, she had polio. And that was something that was always, she went to the Shriners Hospital, so that was something that was always, really valued in our family. So when I came to Altoona, well, one, I worked at a Shriners Hospital also during residency in Philadelphia. And then when I moved to Altoona, I had a patient who had a Shriners ring on, and I asked him about it. I said, my family's always respected the Shriners. How do I get involved with that? And he, I think that same day or that same week, he brought me an application. He goes, fill this out. We'll come interview you and have conversations. And it was a great experience. I ended up being on the board of governors in Philadelphia, another group. And, that group of guys really, I can't tell you the bonding and the camaraderie but also the business connections. If I had a car that needed to be fixed, I knew who to go to for that. If they had a bad knee, they knew who to go to. So there were always those good connections.
No doubt, no doubt. And what would you say are your key connections? The clinic's a great place where you're starting to build some
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah, and like I said, the flavor of the clinic and the conversations of the clinic are different. They're deeper than, my typical orthopedic visit. The typical physician's visit in the office, it's a 15, 20 minutes is really pushing it because, there's other people waiting. But the visits at the clinic, the phone conversations at the clinic really get down into, personal things. They get down into, relationship things, as well as physical performance, physical, feelings. I mean, you went through it yourself, Neil. You're like, hey, I don't have the same energy that I used to have. I don't have the same mental clarity that I have. So, the range of things that we talk about is definitely much deeper, and that helps me as well. That I do have the luxury or the blessing of being able to speak to men all day long, every day, and to hear those things, and it makes my problems less daunting, less, takes the weight off some of my shoulders when you hear other men going through the same things, and when you see their willingness to be vulnerable, to talk about, I had a guy not a couple weeks ago, he opened up about, he had years of drug and alcohol use, specifically drug use and some heavy drug use, and some of the residual physical effects that has had on him. But I said I have lost friends to drugs and alcohol, and I wish I would have had those conversations with those people. Having those conversations with those men, but now they're no longer with us. They've become a victim of that, death of despair. And it's sad, but how many of those people you touch that you don't even know? I
Right.
had a partner um, in my practice in Altoona, and I heard he had passed, and I was a little surprised by that because he was young. And then about a year later, I had another friend who was interviewing with the group, and he mentioned to me, he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry about that. It was sad to hear about the guy who committed suicide." And I was shocked. I was like, really? I had no idea. Um, so it's something it's tragic when it happens, and you look back at those moments and you're like, I wish I had those time back. I wish I'd known that a guy like that who had such strength, who had such, you know, such character and commanded, that he was struggling. So, there's no shame in your game by admitting some vulnerability to reaching out, to maintaining those relationships with others that help both of you. It builds, one plus one is more than two when it comes to that.
No doubt, no doubt. What do you, so basically that's where the Ultimate Men's Clinic gives you that, not just the ability to get healthier, but also mental health wise, have these conversations and build relationships and build,
Absolutely.
yeah. Cause you're not like, what's the usual time when you're a surgeon? You have how many minutes with a patient versus
Yeah.
how many
I mean,
minutes you have.
right. It's got to be very focused. And if someone, I mean, I do try to, I've always tried to engage in conversations and get to know the person and get an idea of their personality. And I think that's important, even in a surgical field. But the range that because I'm not under time constraint with my patients at the clinic, and if they want to call, it's a different, it's, the insurance companies aren't demanding, aren't paying the bill so that, they limit how much you can do per procedure. Like if I come to the office, if a patient comes to the office for a shoulder, and then, mid exam, they say, you know what, my knee bothers me as well. Can you check my knee? We can't. They'll only pay for one problem per visit. They won't approve another X-ray on the same visit. So you have to make another appointment. And that's disappointing to me. I mean, I would say, some of the issues that I have with, standard medicine is related to a lot of that. It removes that doctor-patient relationship, that doctor-patient contract, whatever you want to call it, that, you're trusting me with your health and I'm trusting you with, you
Yeah.
know, to be loyal and to follow my instructions. And when you put that insurance company in the middle, it erodes both of the relationships. The patient doesn't want to be honest. The physician can't, spend the time to do a lot of those extras that people look for. So then, the patient doesn't trust the doctor. They look at the physician as them, the you guys, that outsider, not my doctor. But, I'm going
Right.
to the doctor and, you guys won't do this and you guys won't do that. And it's not me. It's often not your physician. It's the system. It's the
Right.
time constraints. It's the financial constraints. Um, but the physician is the one that you see. That's the person that's in front of your face. So that, of course, that's going to make the physician the one that you blame for these problems. Whereas we have a whole cache of insurance companies and administrators and practice managers behind you that are pulling your strings as the physician and keeping you from doing what it is that you would love to be able to do, but you just can't.
What tips would you offer men right now this month to try to improve their mental health?
Yeah, like I said, I would do something active. I would make a list, 5 things that I'm going to do in the month of June 2026. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to, find something that you enjoy doing. Be selfish about it. What is something you want to do? I want to go on a trip by myself. And when you're on that trip, make friends, make some contacts. I would make a list of 5 things that you want to do for you that are selfish, that involve meeting other people, involve taking care of yourself. I'm going to go be seen for a clinic. I'm going to go to the Ultimate Men's Clinic and schedule an appointment and get my testosterone checked. Do something, make a list of 5 things in June this year that you're going to do that's going to move you in the direction that you want to go. Purely selfish, not for anyone else, not for your mother, your sister, your wife, your girlfriend, your best friend. Do something for you. Make a list of 5 things and act on those things. Actually act on them and make the move towards improving your life, improving your mental health, improving your impact on the world.
When you start to do certain things that are healthier, like I do brain training every day with the Mendy, it's a bioneurofeedback. Then I do yoga for 15 to 20 minutes. My day is much better starting that off instead of jumping right into work. Because as
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, we're going, going, going. If we put this in a schedule and I do this 7 days a week, no break, no stop, and my goal is to continue to do more and more. It's a resistance yoga that Diamond Dallas Page created. It's a totally different type of yoga. It's unreal. It really flexes the muscles, not like
Hmm.
yoga and more in the relaxation side, and it just really is a good workout. Keeping that consistency every day and then say, what, okay, what next can I do? What else can I try? But it's baby steps. It's not as easy as, okay, let's go do this. Let's take a couple things and let's cross them off the list and move forward in the other ones.
Yeah.
And then if we're not happy with what we're currently doing, this is an opportunity for men that men have never had in their lives, and women, anyone, because you can
Yeah,
reinvent yourself tomorrow, because everyone's going to have to reinvent themselves in a little bit of a way.
absolutely.
And this is an opportunity for you. So don't complain anything. Do something that makes you passionate, even if
Mm.
your job is just eating at you. Carve out those moments to do something you really enjoy.
Yeah, when I was, you brought up a memory. When I started the military, I find myself overseas in Japan. I knew no one. I was starting a new career. I was fresh out of residency. So I went from a senior resident to chairman of orthopedics, and I was petrified, absolutely petrified. So I committed to. I mean, I spent an hour each morning before work and I would do three things. I'd wake up and I would do 20 minutes of meditation. Where am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? 20 minutes of exercise. I would do, push-ups, sit-ups. I just did it in my apartment. And then 20 minutes of writing down goals. I think writing is very important. When I wrote my book, I learned more about myself writing that book than I had in 50 years. And I think, when you write things down, especially if you write things down to explain to others and you be clear with it. You don't just say, oh, I want to be fit. I'm going to be more fit.
Right.
Write down the details. What is it that you're going to do that's going to make you more fit? What is it that you're going to do that's going to make you more financially secure? What are you going to do that's going to improve your relationship? Write it down in details as if you're explaining to someone else. So I think those things, I think meditation, you know, calm, be present in the moment, be honest with yourself, and then 20 minutes of any kind of exercise to get the blood going, to get you ready for the day. So I agree with that 100%. Those are all, very good, actionable um, things that you can do to improve yourself today, tomorrow morning.
And then you will have a better attitude if you get
Mhm.
to do these things. And then if you get to go to the gym, which is an opportunity, that's where you connect with other men, work out with them, talk to them, see what's going on, and really build those relationships, get involved in those activities. All right. So you can go to theultimatemensclinic.com and schedule a call with Dr. Jack's team. And you're looking forward to meeting with them, aren't you?
Absolutely.
All right.
Anytime.
That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and the Ultimate Men's Movement, guys. Take care.